recap week 1 in the NFL for you guys and kind of give a little early look into week 2 here. So, first thing we're going to start with is our DraftKings recap for the week.
Yeah, in general, with DraftKings and our prop bets, we had some wins, we had some losses. We had some big wins and some very bad luck. And let's start negative. Let's go with our fuck ups. And it's the glaring one was Mostert.
Yeah.
Mostert killed us. I mean, look, injuries are generally out of your hands, and he was a great play on paper. He was a great play in general for the year. But it can't be ignored that, he's an injury-prone player. We were a little blindsided, hypnotized by his upside, ignored some of the risk with his injury, and we paid the price with him in a lot of our lineups. Our logic wasn't off. Mitchell, the rookie, comes in, has a career day, goes over 100 yards, gets the touchdown, looks great. That was a big miss for us. That one cost us some wins there. I still was in the money on a good amount of my 50-50s, but tournament play and a couple of my lineups I got just right outside the money with Mostert, and it would have been an easy win if I had a serviceable running back in. So that's our big loss of the week.
Yeah, and I'll touch on it. If I had to pick again, I'm putting Mostert in my lineups. I might have it a little more with the injury risk. I probably should have been a little less exposed on him. But the San Francisco running backs tore up that Detroit defense.
Yeah, the logic was right.
But yeah, let's. So Mostert didn't pan out, and then the other one definitely overexposed on again was Kyle Pitts, and that Atlanta offense just didn't show up at all.
I wasn't expecting. I thought the Eagles were going to win that game. I thought this was going to be a shootout, like we talked about, and it was going to be a competitive game. The Falcons look. If you have any Falcons in your season long, I'm worried right now. Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Mike Davis, any of those guys. I'm panic. I'm in panic mode. Especially they're not going to get any favors next week. They're playing Tampa Bay. Way worse matchup than the Eagles. I expect them to get crushed again. If you've got a different feeling, you think Matt Ryan, it's a new offense, if you think he's going to get out of this little funk, maybe hold on. For me, luckily I don't have any Calvin Ridley in my season longs. If I did, I'm looking to see what value I can get from him right now. I'm in panic mode with that offense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping off on Ridley and Pitts just yet. I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot more than I had thought, like way behind, which if they can figure out ways to get the ball out of Ryan's hands a little quicker so he's not under pressure all game, the receivers could definitely make value. The one I'm completely dumping on, though, is going to be Mike Davis. They're not going to be in a position to run the ball ever. And Patterson looks like a better pass-catching back. I mean, he was a wide receiver before moving over to running back. Mike Davis, yeah, he's going to be real limited in his potential here now. So, yeah, I mean, Atlanta's not good. They could be playing from 3 touchdowns behind a lot. Ridley, I think, could still pan out. Pitts honestly ran a great amount of routes, got the targets, didn't make the catches. I'll hold on the pass catchers, but definitely if you have Mike Davis right now, try to unload him for what you can get.
Next negative, which was really all there was for the week. There was Mostert, there's Pitts, and then big one was Aaron Jones. Luckily, I was pretty diversified there. He didn't hurt me too bad. That was a shocker of the week, really. I think not only did most people pick Green Bay to win straight up, but I don't think anyone expected that they were going to, get basically 100 yards total of offense in that game. So, bad week, definitely hurt. I'm not freaking out too much. I had some Rodgers. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about overreactions. But, it's just one of those things. They came out, they got kicked in the mouth. Funky shit happens week 1. One of the reasons that betting lines week 1 is always a sketchy proposition. But that was a miss. I expect Aaron Jones to still have a pretty promising year, but that one hurt in a couple of my lineups. Luckily, there were so many good running back options this week. I had some diversification from him.
Yeah, I played some Jones, but I was pretty light on him. Yeah, and outside of that, those were the three, misses for us. But we can definitely talk now about the ones that went right, and also the very highly played guys that we avoided on purpose.
Yeah.
So for what went right, I mean the Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith stack looked really good. Those guys had chemistry. That touchdown route was perfectly ran, perfectly thrown. So that stack looked great. Our Kyler stacks looked good with Hopkins.
Yep.
I think one of my highest scoring lineups of the week, which I didn't play that much of, was the Mahomes stack with Hill and Kelsey. And you can't go wrong with that,
Yeah.
Running backs Mixon looked great.
Yep.
The defense, the 49ers defense, double-digit points. Didn't explode like I had hoped, and they gave up a lot of points down the stretch, and that started to trickle down a little. But we got the pick six, and it made value.
Those last 2 minutes hurt us. 16 points in 2 minutes and the ball back out. That hurt. But generally, they were good picks. Denver didn't get those turnovers we were looking for, but they had a solid performance. They looked like a good D. We weren't too far off there. Biggest win really is what you just said, though. It was the Hurts-Smith. We pretty much rode that in as much as possible. Smith was dirt cheap. Hurts was very good, helped us with other spots. I mean, anytime that I can have a running back go out and get me 2 points and get injured and still break even and actually make a little profit, that's a win. It means we hit something right. So,
and not just a running back. A running back we played 85 to 90% of our lineups with.
Exactly.
Still ended up even money. And a lot of it came from avoiding some of the stuff that we definitely saw coming, which was that Pittsburgh-Buffalo game was highly played.
Yep.
Didn't like that at all. Marquez Callaway, we told you to stay away from. I think he had like 32% ownership in a lot of my tournaments.
Yep.
1 catch, 14 yards. Complete bust. Elijah Moore was high on everybody's cost per point. We told you real risky. Guy had like 1 catch for negative yards, I think.
Yeah.
One we got lucky with, and I played a decent amount of them, was Robbie Anderson caught the 157-yard touchdown.
Yep.
Saved his day because that was his only target of the day, so was off base there a little bit, but it panned out. Running backs, I mean, James Robinson didn't make value, but honestly, running backs had a really struggled week one in general. So outside of Christian McCaffrey, who's just an unbelievable specimen, whose floor is 25 points. The guy didn't even score a touchdown. Scored 27. Other than that, running backs, it was tough sledding week one. And, I mean, just looking ahead real quick, it's looking like tough sledding week two.
Yeah, we also, another stack that I want to touch on that we did really well with was that Seahawks stack. We were very high on Russell. I had a lot of Russell. I switched in a lot of DK and Lockett, which paid off huge for me. I will say DK kind of saved the day for me a little bit because I was probably a little heavier on DK. He was rocking a goose egg for a long period of time in that, but he came through, got 4 catches, got a touchdown for us. But Lockett, Russell Wilson was the play. That was big for me, and quite a few tournaments that they basically carried the way for me to be in the money there.
Yeah, so overall, like I said, we broke even. If Mostert's injury doesn't happen, probably have a great week, but that's the risk of the game is injuries. You hate to see it when you're that exposed on a player, and 2 runs. I mean, at least he gave us a full week last year before he got hurt. 2 plays, averaged 10 yards a carry. And then now I think the news just came out he's done for the year. So
yeah, he did.
That's a tough blow, especially because I got a lot of them in season long, so we'll have to move on there. Prop bets recap, though. We did really well. There's a couple we missed, and honestly, it didn't have to do with getting the player wrong, more so as the game script. So the first one we got wrong was Alvin Kamara catches, and he had 3 quick, and then they didn't need to throw the ball anymore. So
he was on pace, and it was just a very odd game script, but I stand by that one. I think Kamara, based on how I watched that offense go, it's flowing through Kamara. I still like him to rack up a lot of catches and yards in general this year. I like betting on him in these prop bet situations. I think he can destroy them if it's a competitive game.
Mhm.
So Kamara was a miss.
Matt Ryan was our other miss.
Matt Ryan was a big miss. I got to say, I was very disappointed. I did not expect that type of performance. I just didn't realize the offensive line was going to struggle that much. So that was a miss. Another one I want to highlight that was a miss was Pittman. We had him for catches, and I thought he was going to really establish himself as the number one receiver on the Colts offense. Didn't look that way.
Yeah.
The whole offense didn't look great, but that's a miss. But with that offense, one of our biggest wins, one of our heaviest prop bets was Nyheim Hines.
Who not only covered in like the
Crushed
first
it.
drive. Yeah, I mean, he had 6 receptions, I believe. The prop was set at 2.
Yes, and I want to point out, too, he had 6 receptions, and Jonathan Taylor had 6 receptions.
Yeah.
And I don't think I think Taylor is very good at catching. He'll have his catches. Taylor's not going to average 6 catches a game. That means Hines could be in for 7, 8 catches in certain games, in certain scenarios. So Hines is a really, really great prop bet, really great PPR guy in general, but we're going to be pounding those lines.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably move him up to 3 or 4 this week, and I'm still comfortable playing that.
Yep.
Kareem Hunt, 2 catches hit. A little closer than I would have liked. I mean, he got him late. But again, that's a game script one where I just thought they would be down a lot earlier.
Yep. As soon as they came down, he got 2 catches immediately.
3, I think, on that
Yes.
same drive.
Yep.
So that one was good.
Myles Gaskin. We really pounded the
The running back receptions.
running back receptions, which we talked about in our show, was probably our favorite prop. We think it's the most, wrongly priced prop that's out there usually. So Gaskin we hit.
Yeah.
Chase Edmonds we hit
Yep.
easily. So we really made our day was those running back receptions.
Yeah, and then the one receiver we did decide to play was Keenan Allen. Hit easy.
Yep.
The guy's just a catch machine. I wouldn't touch his yards. His touchdowns might be a little lower this season, but as far as receptions go, I mean, that guy's 8 to 12 receptions a game is where he's going to be on pace for.
Yep. And the other quarterback we played was an easy hit. We had Russell Wilson, 2 touchdowns. I want to say he had that by the end of first quarter, beginning of second quarter. He had already thrown his 2, so a nice easy win there. On the day, we had great returns in general. A
Yep.
couple losses, but what would you say our percentage return was in the 30% range?
Yeah, prop bets returned 32% week 1, and our just betting our games NFL week 1 was a 14% return.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. Was the games we told you to bet that we were our confidence one? We said how crazy week 1 is, but our big bet were the Rams, San Francisco.
Yep.
Took care of business. That was our biggest bet. We did sprinkle in some other ones. Had some losses.
Lost Green Bay, and that was only our only loss that we bet was the Green Bay game, and we weren't even close.
Yeah, you're right.
And
We hit the Kansas City one.
Yep.
Ravens, we did have a little recommendation on. That was a weird game. We actually did not play it heavy just because all the weird injuries going on. But it was a solid day, really just with those confident picks of Rams and San Francisco.
Yeah, I want to point out 9 favorites week 1 lost. Only 4 favorites covered the spread. And I know some people asked us about why we were playing the San Francisco money line versus the -9. It was a little chalky at -300. And look, at one point I was like, damn, we left money on the table because they were going to beat them by 30. But football is just a crazy sport, man. Look what happened. And they don't
Yeah.
cover the spread there at the end.
Yep.
So sometimes, look, you give up a little bit going chalky money lines, but you protect yourself from just some craziness, especially week 1. As the season, betting the lines is hard, though. As the season gets on, the bookies get better. Those lines come a lot closer to where the finals are every week. So definitely tune in, though. Our prop bet, NFL bet section is Fridays. And, yeah, we're just going to give you some value plays. And, there's some dogs next week that we're looking at. So,
And generally speaking, I take what happened as a win. Anytime week 1, like we've been talking about, is the craziest week you have. Who would have expected Brandon Ayuk gets 0 targets and 0 catches? We got Mitchell as the second string running back that goes in and crushes it for San Francisco as opposed to Sermon. There's just a lot of weird. Singletary gets the whole thing and Moss gets scratched at the end. There's just a lot of uncertainty goes in week one. With an injury, breaking even, and actually even gaining a little profit on DraftKings and getting a 30% return on our prop bets, I'm going to take that all day week one.
Yep.
And that's some, I feel like that's good momentum to build on going into week two.
Yeah. So heading into week two, let's talk some overreactions from week one.
All right, let's go. I feel like there's two overreactions. There's overreactions that are true, and they're not an overreaction. Overreactions where they're way off, and maybe there's some opportunity for you to take advantage of that, whether it be in DraftKings playing a low percentage starter, or maybe in your fantasy year drafts for your year, go trade some people, get these undervalued guys. So let's start it off. What do we want to go with? Overreactions that we feel are true.
Jacksonville's going to end up with the number one pick overall again.
Yep, I think that is a good bet there. You know, I mean, Houston might be a little bit better than we thought, but Houston is not a good team, and Houston just destroyed Jacksonville. And I think that's a safe pick there. I feel bad for Lawrence. I think Lawrence has talent. I think he's going to take a little time to get used to that NFL speed, but he's going to be in the trial by fire because they're doing him no favors with that offensive line, with that play calling. It's going to be a rough year for him until he figures out, and I agree with that. I think they are the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah, and, I mean, we talked earlier, Urban Meyer just might not make it this season.
Yep.
Play calling was horrendous.
Yep.
I mean, James Robinson saw 5 carries,
Mm-hmm.
and you set up your rookie quarterback to throw the ball 51 times.
Penalties,
Oh, yeah.
bunch of penalties, just terrible.
Look, Lawrence needs to give a little more respect to NFL DBs. He can't be throwing across his body back to the middle of the field, but I think Lawrence will pan out. But this team their defense looked really bad against a not good offense. They're going to struggle all year long here.
All right, let's talk about another overreaction that we agree with. I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts. He's going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback throughout the season, and I agree with that. You know, I was split on him going into this year. I had grabbed him in a few leagues, but it was mostly based on upside. I knew he was a risky play. It would go one or the other. Not saying Atlanta's any sort of world beater, but seeing him use the weapons that they got for him and seeing how comfortable he is, you know, you can't question this guy's work ethic throughout Alabama, Oklahoma, NFL. Everybody says how hard he works. He looks like a guy who greatly improved in the offseason, looks prepared, looks more confident and comfortable. I think he can keep this up. I think he's going to get 50, 60, even 70 rushing yards a game, sprinkle in some touchdowns. He is in for a, you know, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson type of season, maybe a little bit less than those two breakouts, but I think he could easily finish in the top 5, and he's definitely going to finish in the top 10 in fantasy.
Yeah, he's comfortable. He's got his receiver from college, man. He got Smith out there, and they looked comfortable.
Yep.
He started to hit Rager late. He had the tight ends going. The running backs were going. And honestly, the only thing that stopped him from having just an absolute monster stat line was that Atlanta didn't push him at all.
Yep.
He spent the entire second half in cruise control.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I mean, we could have easily seen a 4 or 5 touchdown performance out of him. Passes were on the mark, and yeah, I don't know if I'm buying the Philadelphia hype necessarily, but Jalen Hurts is going to score fantasy points this year.
All right, let's go through a couple others. I got 2 overreactions that I'm agreeing with right now. Similar situations from a high-picked running back. Derrick Henry and Najee Harris are already going to be busts. What do you think?
Yeah,
I agree with that overreaction. I don't like their situations. I think especially Tennessee's offensive line and their defense looked so poor that, you know, it reminds me very much of the Browns' Nick Chubb situation. If they have a lead, one of the best players in the NFL, one of the best fantasy players in the NFL. Mm-hmm. If they're down and you're not doing play action anymore, and, you know, Derrick Henry's not going to have a good season. We knew a touchdown regression was coming either way. He doesn't catch the ball. And I think the Titans are a lot worse than we thought. And I think they're going to be down. I think their defense is terrible. Their secondary is terrible. And they're going to make Tannehill throw it. And I don't think they're going to have too many leads where they just pound the rock. So Derrick Henry, I'm on board with being a bust. I'm not saying he's going to be an unplayable fantasy asset, but where he was taken in the draft, he's a bust. Najee Harris, I feel similar about. I just don't think Pittsburgh's offense is very good. And I also just think he looks slow and unexplosive to me. Where he was going in the first round, early second, I think that's going to end up being a bust.
Yeah, I'm going to add a third to that. I'm going to add Barkley to that mix.
Yep.
And this is not a knock on Barkley. He looked good. The Giants' offensive line is as bad as they come.
Yep.
Again, it's going to be a team that's going to play from behind most of the season. Yeah, he can catch the ball, but look, I mean, it's going to be hard for him to get enough touches to make the value that he was going in the first round. To touch on Najee Harris might be unplayable at one point in this season.
Yeah.
He looked he had like the third lowest, yards before contact. Pittsburgh's offense isn't great. They're going to lean on that unbelievable defense. But he didn't look explosive. He's not catching the edge. He thought he was going to run over NFL linebackers, and that's definitely not the case.
Yep.
And then Derrick Henry, look, he'll have his weeks where he explodes if they can get ahead. But yeah, I'm with you. I think, 80% of that guy's games are going to be underwhelming and very similar to what you saw in week 1.
Yep. And let's, back to Najee Harris. He can prove me wrong this week. You got a Raiders matchup. Ravens were able to run all over him. Prove me wrong, but for me, I don't think he's going to get it done. I think he's too slow. Everybody loves him this week. I'm not a fan. I'm not playing him in DraftKings personally.
No, I'm not going to be touching him.
All right, last one. We touched on this a little bit earlier because it was one of our misses, but overreaction that I agree with. Matt Ryan, I want no part of in fantasy, and a lot of that Atlanta team is going to suffer because of that line. We kind of already covered this. You said you'd keep the pass catchers. I don't disagree with you fully. They're going to be down. The game script helps. That offensive line was so bad that I just, you still need some time to get a player downfield, and Matt Ryan had about 3 seconds to throw the ball every time. I have Matt Ryan in one of my fantasy leagues, and I have him as a backup in a couple. I'm getting rid of him ASAP. I don't believe in him. I just saw enough there, and I think he's going to be a bust all year.
Yeah, I agree. He might do okay with yardage playing from behind like that, but he's not going to score the touchdowns either that I expected. Yeah, Matt Ryan is, a fading quarterback on a really bad team. We might be seeing the twilight of his career here.
Yep.
And, sadly for Atlanta, they don't have anyone to move on to yet. So they might get an early enough draft pick here to go draft somebody next year, though.
All right, let's talk overreactions that we think are exactly that, overreactions.
Let's start with the most recent one, which is the Raiders are legit.
Yep. No, I agree. I think it was a very weird game. To be honest with you, while I was watching that game until the last couple minutes in the fourth quarter, even though it was close and Oakland was hanging around, I felt so confident that the Ravens were going to win that game. Props to Raiders for pulling that off, but I'm with you. Derek Carr ended up with a decent stat line, 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, I want to say.
Yep.
But when you watched him play, he looked lost at stretches of the game. I still think that offense is going to struggle. They force-feed the ball to Waller, which is great for fantasy owners for Waller, but not really sustainable. Jacobs looked slow. I thought Kenyon Drake looked better than Jacobs. I don't believe in the Raiders at all. I agree with you. They have a tough AFC West schedule they're playing. I don't think they're making the playoffs. I don't think they're for real.
No, the one highlight for their team would be Crosby on the edge of that line. Looked spectacular.
Yeah, he did.
Outside of that, their defense was not good against the Baltimore team missing, 5 or 6 weapons.
Yep.
And they still gashed them on the ground with rookie running back Latavius Murray signed 2 days ago. So they got gashed on the ground. Carr did look lost. He overthrew receivers all day. Baltimore's defense is a shell of what it used to be.
Yeah. And we're dealing with their own injuries and whatnot.
Yeah, and look, he pulled it off. a couple of those passes up the sideline, like we're not going to call them luck, but you underthrew receivers that were able to come back, make big catches for you, but you're not going to be able to lean on that all year long. Gruden, gritting his teeth throwing the ball that much. Like, that guy's going to try and establish the run again. And with that offensive line and your running backs look washed up, I mean, I don't see much upside here for the Raiders. Great win, great way to break in the new stadium with fans, but
yep, it's a hell of a game.
They got a tough schedule, and yeah, they're going to get beat up here.
All right, let's talk next overreaction. I have, Aaron Rodgers is done. I think that's an overreaction. Do I think Aaron Rodgers is going to definitely put up the fantasy numbers he did last year? Maybe not. Do I think there's some risk with him moving forward? Sure. Do I think it's time to trade off all the Packers' offensive weapons and get rid of Aaron Rodgers? Hell no. Do not do that. I've seen people saying that they're benching him next week against Detroit. Give me a break. Unless you got one of the top quarterbacks on your bench as well, I'm playing Aaron Rodgers all day against Detroit. I think he's going to right the ship here. I think all of those weapons, Aaron Jones is going to have a bounce back. I think Devontae Adams is going to have a huge game. And look, I know there's a lot of drama this offseason, but if you really watched that whole game, sure, Rodgers did not look good. He looked rusty. He looked unenthused even. But I really think Saints aren't getting enough credit. Not only did their defense look great, they really knew how to control the time of possession.
Yeah, they ran long drives.
Converted every third down. I think their drive in the second quarter took the entire second quarter. Brilliant way to beat Rodgers. You never let him get going. He's constantly rusty. Was it an embarrassing loss? Was it a terrible loss? Did it screw a lot of people in fantasy, including me? It did. I think we're jumping to conclusions here. I think Rodgers is going to be fine. This reminds me very similar to last year when Tampa Bay just beat the crap out of Green Bay. Everybody was, these guys aren't legit. They're, this and that. I think he's going to have a bounce back. Look, if he has that type of performance against Detroit, I'll have a very different conversation next week on this podcast. Until that time, I'm not panicking yet.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Rodgers from a fantasy perspective. I would be worried if I was Green Bay management on a pure football perspective, in that when the games are tough like they were Sunday, old Aaron Rodgers would have dug deep, put his team on his shoulder, and at least they weren't going to win that game, but he would have at least got him in, some drives, scored a couple touchdowns just purely on some Aaron Rodgers magic. I don't see him digging deep for that organization anymore. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be plenty of games that he's going to go off. I mean, there's, Detroit next week. Detroit has nothing for Adams on the outside. When the games are tough, you start getting into playoff hunt, things like that. I just don't know if that guy's going to put his body on the line and dig deep for an organization he's going to leave next year. But you're right. Play Aaron Rodgers. Roll him out week 2 with pure confidence. There's no way you bench this guy. There's no way you try and get value for Adams or Jones right now.
Even Green Bay on the year. It's like, Green Bay's not playing in a great division. It's like, I still like them to make the playoffs this year, unless something drastic changes. The Vikings and Lions aren't scaring me right now,
Or the Bears.
Yep.
So, definitely an overreaction on Aaron Rodgers.
Yep. All right, let's, any more that you can think of?
That was pretty much,
Those were the glaring ones for me. Those were the big ones that I think were out there that needed to be discussed. Let's talk a little bit about, some fantasy stars at the top that, kind of came through for people. Didn't let people down. We already talked about some busts with Derrick Henry, Najee Harris. Let's talk about the top guys, not necessarily top fantasy performances, but top guys that you took in the first round, early second, that are looking like they're gonna do their job.
Yeah, let's start with the 2 receivers that look great. 2 of the 3 receivers that were getting drafted in the first round was Tyreek Hill, who, what a specimen of a talent, man.
Yeah,
he's so fast. It's unbelievable to watch on a football field. And, the way Mahomes can get the ball down the field, that guy's going to have a monster year.
Yep.
He panned out. And then the guy you were real high on in, daily especially, and in the league, we had him above Adams, and that's Hopkins.
Yep.
The guy looked great.
I love Hopkins. I have him on a lot of teams, and I didn't understand why. A couple years ago in Houston, he was being drafted top 3, top 5 overall.
Mm-hmm.
He's on a better offense.
Yep.
With no weapons and a guy that force-feed his possessions. I didn't understand why he was going in the middle of the second. He could easily end the year as the top receiver, and it looked that way. 2 touchdowns, made some amazing moves.
Yep.
Great possession receiver as well. So, yeah, if you got Hopkins, you're looking good, especially with the value you got him at. All right, let's talk backs. The obvious one out there, Christian McCaffrey. Talk about a high floor. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen a player in fantasy that has a higher floor than what McCaffrey does. This is a guy who kind of a pedestrian game in terms of what he's capable of. He doesn't get in the end zone. I think they run the red zone 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
Had some obviously deep passes, had some where they didn't convert. And normally in a game like that, McCaffrey gets 2 touchdowns. He's the red zone guy. Without any touchdowns, the guy goes for 30 points basically, 28, 29 in a PPR. He's their leading receiver with 9 receptions for 90 yards. He gets about 90 yards on the ground. It's if you got McCaffrey, you're sitting happy. You're praying that no injury happens, but other than that, there's not a worry in the world about this guy's performance from a week-to-week basis.
No, I mean, yeah. I mean, the guy didn't score a touchdown. The team didn't really score that well.
Yep.
Look, they're going to get tougher matchups than the Jets moving forward, but the guy catches so many balls that it's Le'Veon Bell's prime-esque and even better in that the guy's going to end up with 8 to 10 receptions a game. He's going to get some yards because they give him the ball.
Mm-hmm.
There's no worry in the world. And when he does score his touchdowns, the guy's going to score you 40, 50 points.
Yep. Another one I'm sitting there happy with. Not that he had such an explosive week 1. It's Alvin Kamara for me. For example, I know Dalvin Cook, I think, scored slightly more than Alvin Kamara. They were pretty close. But it's like watching those 2 performances, I feel so much better about Alvin Kamara because they won 38-3. Mm. He didn't barely play the 4th quarter. And it just looks like he's going to be one of those guys like McCaffrey that just has such a high floor. The whole offense is revolved around him. He's going to get his catches. He's going to get his touches. He's involved in the red zone. Mm-hmm. If that game's even remotely competitive, Kamara's going for 30, 35, no problem. So if you have Kamara, also doesn't hurt that Winston looks great. Looks like that offense isn't going to miss a beat. It's going to keep going. So I like Kamara. I feel very comfortable with my early Kamara selection in a few leagues. I'm feeling happy with that choice.
Yep. And then, let's talk the two of the top 3 tight ends looked phenomenal week 1.
Yep.
And Kelsey, look, that Kansas City offense that was probably their worst week you're going to see out of them, and they went completely off in the second half.
Yep.
And then Waller got force-fed 19 times by Derek Carr because that guy doesn't know how to go through progressions, and he just checks down to his safety valve. So those 2 guys look great. Look, Kittle might not have had their stats, but he looked good. But I would definitely be a lot happier if I ended up with Waller over Kittle in some of those drafts.
I agree. He looked amazing. It's first off, he's their guy. He's their number 1 receiver there, really. He's such a big target. He's such a good route runner. You're feeling good if you got Waller.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk early preview. DraftKings, we're not going to go into too much detail. Obviously, Friday's our big detail one. We're also going to do a quick Thursday fantasy look for the Washington Giants game. Talk about some guys you might want on your lineup for your normal one. If you play daily for the one game, we're going to have some highlights there for you. Real quick, games that we have our eye on. Big one that sticks out to me, Cowboys-Chargers. You're actually funny. We got a Cowboys fan here, Chargers fan here. So we're going to be very invested in that game. But also from an actual scoring potential, it is probably going to be the top scoring game of the week. Has the highest over. We saw what Dak can do in a shootout. You're going to want the players in this game. We're definitely looking at stacks in tournaments on that one. So that's one that we're keeping an eye on right now. Corey, another game you got an eye on?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a couple games, but a couple offenses we're definitely going to look at. 'Cause just Tampa Bay against Atlanta. Look, we're expecting a blowout here. I don't expect much competition coming the other way, but you're looking at 35 points before they even consider pulling Brady out of that game. So Tampa Bay's offense is in play for us. Another one is going to be the Seattle offense.
Yep.
They get to tee off on that Titans secondary that Arizona just completely, embarrassed in week 1. So
Like Russell a lot. I don't know if you've seen too. They had, obviously we know who the top two big dogs are on that team, the Lockett and Metcalf. Some of their secondary type receivers actually got a lot of concussion trouble in that game. So expect even more targets, and even maybe a sneaky guy would be a Gerald Everett there, just because there's only so many guys, and Russell's still going to get the job done. So we're looking forward to that.
And then I would say this week we are looking at a lot of weather issues in the early reports. So Friday we'll kind of break all that down for you guys, but we're looking at a lot of rain, maybe Jacksonville, Tampa, things like that. So that'll definitely change kind of where we're going in these games if we're getting some downpour here. But other than that, we're looking at a good week. I will say, quickly looking through DraftKings, man, running backs are going to be a tough one to get right this week, and that's something we're going to have to dig a lot deeper. There's wide receivers galore, but
we got a lot of more research to do between now and Friday. Right now, we're looking that we're going to be willing to spend more on receivers and go with the cheaper running backs, just based on matchups and value this week. Could change, but something to keep an eye on there. We feel much more comfortable with our top receivers this week.
Yeah. So, looking ahead this week for you guys. Thursday, about 2 hours before the game, we'll give you guys some lineups for the Thursday night showdown. And then Friday, we got an MMA and NFL. So, two good shows for you guys to watch heading into the weekend. It's a great weekend. We got, Saturday, good MMA card, and then lead right into some Sunday football.
All right, guys. We look forward to seeing you then.